is, for the record, July the 8th, 2020, a year none of us will ever forget. I'm interviewing for the Voces Oral History Project Center at the University of Texas, Austin. Please know this interview will be placed, Felipe, this interview will be placed in the Nettie Lee Benson Latin American Collection at the UT Austin. It is, if there's anything you don't wish to answer or talk about, we'll honor your wishes. So if there's something you want to talk about, please bring it up. Feel free and we'll do it. Because we're not conducting this interview in person, I need to record your consenting. So I'll ask you a series of 5 questions. Please say, yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each one. There are 2 questions we need to make sure you agree to before we go on. Voces wishes to archive your interview along with any other photographs and other documentation at the Benson Library at UT Austin. We will retain copyright of the interview and any other materials you donate to Voces. Do you give consent to archive your interview and your material at the Benson Library?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, thank you. Do you grant Voces copyright over the interview and any material if you provide it?
Yes, I do.
And do you agree to show us to post this interview, to allow us to post this interview on the internet where it can be viewed by people around the world?
Yes, I do.
If any one of these questions is, hold on. If any one of these questions is no, okay, we turn off the system. But we wanted to discuss, be sure this is established beforehand so that there are no surprises. I'm expecting it to be smooth once I get started. So on to the other 2 questions. We have many questions in a pre-interview form that we already filled out. We use that information. Actually, I've got to do that, right? The entire form is kept in a secure Voces server. Before we send it to Benson, we will have stripped out any contact information for yourself or family members so that it will not be part of the public file. Your public file will only be accessible at the library, the Benson Library. Do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview and your public file available to researchers at the Benson?
Yes, I agree.
And on occasion, Voces receives requests from journalists like me, but they're on time, who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone numbers or your email with journalists?
Yes, I do.
Great. Is still correct, Ramon?
Yeah, pretty sure. Do you still need to do the pre-interview?
Yeah. Can you guide me through that?
Mhm.
Well, I sent him the invitation. Is there more?
For the pre-interview?
Yeah.
No, I think typically we're supposed to fill it out and kind of go through it with them. But if you'd like to move on to the actual interview, the pre-interview form takes a little while to fill out. So, I'd say we could probably just move on to the actual interview before.
Ramon, I like how you think.
Fill it later, yeah.
Hey, Laddie.
Felipe, you're on mute. Oh,
yes. I was telling my kids because I have 4 boys. So I was
really?
4 boys?
Yeah.
Well, you better be tough. Good for you. Okay. We're here to talk about this pandemic. the virus and what it's doing and its impact. Um, and I guess on general terms, I'd like to start there. Um, what do you see it doing? How have you noticed it? And when did you notice it? I mean, was there a moment when all of a sudden you thought, oh,
Yeah, I mean, I think the moment that I realized is that I was in Texas visiting my family
oh
during
my.
the spring break,
Mm-hmm.
and I got back to my office, and we had already started to hear about this in China, right, in December, and a lot of people thought it was fake, and nobody was taking it serious. But when I realized it was very serious is when we got the first case here in Michigan, and then somebody tested positive in my building, and the fear of it skyrocketed right all over in Detroit, and it was hitting all over Michigan. Michigan was the second hit after New York. And so as soon as I started seeing people were dying, that's when it got very, 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 very real to me. And I started telling my family members in Texas to be very cautious, and the more we were learning about it in terms of cleaning products that you were bringing into the house and wearing a mask. Um, and so me in my position that I'm at, I advised the governor that nothing was coming out in English, in Spanish. So me and my commissioners had a concern right away that stuff wasn't coming out in multi-languages for people that didn't understand, right? So here we are in a pandemic and people are dying, people are getting infected, but yet our communities of color do not know. And so we were able to advocate. And so executive orders were now being started to be translated, and that work's still continuing, but that's when it got real. I mean, I guess when I got back from Texas and somebody in my building tested positive, then I got nervous and pulled the kids out of school before they even stopped the school, because I have two of them that have asthma, and so I wanted just to be safe, right? And so that's how it impacted right away.
You're from Texas?
Yes, I was telling Ram that it's a little bit complicated. I was born in Mexico, immigrated to Texas, so I spent some time, but we were migrant workers, so we'd moved to Tennessee, Georgia, Michigan. So it was like a few months here and there. So there was really never. But yeah, I call Texas home because that's where my mom is with my brothers, sisters.
Where? What city?
They're in Donna, Texas.
Where?
Donna,
No. I
Donna,
didn't ask who. I said where. Yeah, okay.
and Donna.
Well, see,
Yeah.
where is that?
That's by McAllen.
Okay.
Yeah, Brownsville. It's in between McAllen and Brownsville. It's a little town, West Laco.
So you're in a situation that covers a big chunk of the country, particularly among our Hispanic communities.
Yeah.
And how'd you get where you are? I mean, if you can, whatever detail you think we need, because that, that gives you a lot of knowledge, right? I mean, experience.
Yes. Being an immigrant, right? Having that experience of being undocumented and becoming a legal resident at 7. But just understanding that aspect of it, and then the profiling, the racial, the discrimination, the being pulled over right on the side with your entire family in a vehicle and packing and moving, and being raised in the fields and working, working long hours. I remember at age 11 I started working 16 to 18-hour shifts in the blueberry fields, right? And and then going to the packing house and then cleaning the machine. So doing that your entire childhood, you grow up pretty quickly, and you have a perspective. And then the academics too. I mean, when you're a migrant worker, you're always put in the back, right? You skip school, you don't start, you start late and you end early. So I couldn't read and write when I was graduating. I graduated at 16. Um, and it was basically because I outsmarted the school. It wasn't because I was a genius or anything. It was just that mentality, right? When you're out in the fields, um, negotiating and advocating at such a young age, um, you build certain skill sets, right? Where um, you're put to the test, and so that was the beginning of got a 13 on my ACT, right? And so, but luckily, this gentleman, Rudy Hernandez from Southwest Detroit, um, gave my sister an opportunity to come to college, right? And so, and being a Mexican family, my parents were like, "You gotta go, you gotta go and take care of her," right? And so, it was never intended for me to go to college. It was my parents pushing me to go take care of my sister. And then the rest is history, right? I went, got my undergrad, got my master's, and then got my doctorate degree. And in that journey, I learned a ton of things, right? I mean, being a mental health therapist and with prisoners, um, working in the criminal justice system, traveling all over the world, being in Africa and doing work there in Ukraine, in Greece, Panama, Turkey, and just bringing those skills that were sharpened as a young age, physically, mentally, and spiritually, and then just they helped me through my journey, right? And and the crazy part is that I got my academics paid for, right? I got a fellowship for my doctorate paid for completely. Masters, I was a grad student, and all these things. I'm not a self-made person, like I said. There's a ton of people that helped me through my journey. And so that's how I operate too, as a leader, as a community. Like when if the table's not long enough, then we'll make it longer so that other voices are heard.
Forgive me, but I want to go back. You covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, and then I try to keep it short,
No. Feel free.
Okay.
I guess the notion of your childhood background and where you've taken it on many levels. First of all, you've done a lot. I mean, in terms of distance, but you've also been in some distinct situations. How, if you can, at least relate your multicultural childhood to the places you've been, Ukraine, Africa. I mean, geez, all that fascinates me, especially how you're relating as a PhD earner, how you've related that. Could you touch on those however you want?
Yeah, I think for me, the wanting is to go to another country is to experience what my parents felt like, right? Coming to this country. And still my mom doesn't speak any English. And my father was a bracero. That's how I was able to get residency at 7, because my father paid the ultimate price of coming to this country back in the day. And because of that, he left to be with the Lord early, right? And so when I was a sophomore in college. And so I think my father, when he passed away, that's when I was intrigued with putting myself in uncomfortable situations. I backpacked as well throughout Europe, and slept in tents, just wanting to just be, right, be in communities where I was uncomfortable and putting my faith on the line, and asking God to just guide me through these, you know, um, without a map, really. Like I remember getting to Italy and then not knowing where I was gonna go, and then meeting some Japanese, um, two guys, and then I ended up going to Switzerland with them without even communicating. Right, it was through a book that the gentleman had, and he was traveling all over the world. I was just going through Europe, so I tagged along with him to Switzerland. And but that's the way my life has been, right? It's been about crossing borders and going, and and because of that, those experiences, I think they've allowed me to look at things from a different lens of equity, and ensuring that people have at least the basic needs to fight, to have a fighting chance, right? And especially in a pandemic, you have to look at things with that vision of of just having an equity-based mentality. And but yeah, no, going to Africa, Ukraine, Greece, and when I went to study abroad, I was always like the poorest kid, right? Like um, I took $300, right, like to Ukraine, and I had to make it stretch. And I took like $300 to Africa, and I had to make it. And I think my spiritual connectiveness to my spiritual side, like I was fortunate that people would take me in, right, and feed me, and I didn't have to spend money. And or sometimes the professors were so gracious that they'd allow me, for example, to stay with their mom in Greece so that I wouldn't have to pay. And so very resourceful, right? But those skills, um, I'll give you one example, and then I'll give it back to you.
That's
I
all
was
right.
in Harvard. I was sent to a training, and it was about negotiating. And there was people from all over the world, from Brazil, from England, and then you have me, right? This mocoso from Matehuala, because that's really what I consider myself, like I'm raza. It's still, you can't take it, right? No matter where I'm at, I'm still the same. And the professor was so intrigued with how I out negotiated some of the CEOs, some of the military people, to get what I wanted in a negotiating setting. And I told her, she asked me, she pulled me aside. She's like, "How did you do it?" I said, "Look, there's many people like me that are picking blueberries right now that could do a better job than I can. We're just not here at the table, right? We're not allowed in these spaces, but I bet you there's 100 of my people that can out negotiate me, and then all of you." So I say all that because I credit everything, my entire success to my upbringings, right? And another thing, like I grew up really, really poor. I mean, you all know how migrants are. Like I never had a bed. I'm the youngest of 8, so I slept in the floor my entire childhood, um, my teenage years, until I started at Michigan State University. The first time I had a bed and didn't know how to react to that. I would still sleep in the floor. My roommate was this Jewish guy from West Bloomfield, one of the wealthiest places in the country. And it was interesting. You come in with 2 bags of trash to your dorm, and you already feel a certain way. You can't read, you can't write, and you're sitting across this dude that had a 30-some on his ACT. And I didn't know what that was. I was too ignorant, right, to know what that was. Thank God. If not, I would have walked away. But yeah, and then still in my road now, I'm too ignorant to know, right? I'm here for the people, and that's it.
There's 1,000 ways I want to go here. How would you summarize your travels? How many countries have you been to?
I've been through 16 countries, and the last one that I did was in Costa Rica. It was with my it was like 3 years ago. It was with my good friend Eric Thomas. He's the number one motivational speaker in the world, and so he's a good friend of mine, and I've known him for like close to 20 years. But I knew him when he wasn't the greatest of the the best in the world, you know, and I've seen the growth and the development, and sometimes I occasionally go with him whenever my wife allows me to go to these places and speak and tell my testimony with him. But that was the last time. It was in Costa Rica, and we were at the presidential hotel there in San Jose, and got to witness, right? Got to witness what it was like to, because I've flown all over, but I never flown first class, right? I had never been treated, you know, to like that. And so to me it was remarkable. And again, it's just such a blessing to have those experiences and still that, you know, just it's just such a blessing.
Oh boy. What would you say? What's your training, and how did it put you where you are? I mean, what
So
would you
my
call you?
training-
Yeah.
Yeah.
What your? How would you describe your?
I think I'm like a healer, right? If you put it in a context,
Okay.
a word healer, right? I use my words to fight, right? To fight, but in a I've had enough battles to know that the path of least resistance is the best path. Um, to collaborate. Yes, I can fight, right? I can physically, literally get into a brawl, but that's not the way of the warrior, right? The way of the warrior is a silent, sometimes silent, and knowing how to use your power, like your words, your influence. Um, so that's how I would describe it. And again, it's just um, being the youngest and being in spaces where we're always been the underdog, and being okay with that, and having to use my words, right, to convince or to persuade. Um, and I had to do that early on too in college. When you come in unable to read and write, all I could rely on was my work ethic of those 18-hour shifts to come in and do it again on the books. And so, and with a little bit of negotiating with the professors to give me a 2.0, right, to stay on. And that's why I would say like a word healer is how I would describe um, me as a leader or a trainer.
I cannot let this go. You went to college and you couldn't read and write.
I couldn't read or write. Like I said, I as a migrant worker.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so my professor, there's a migrant teacher here, Miss Sherry Meyer. Every time I see her, because she gave me a test my senior year, and I was at a second grade level, right?
Wait. Your senior year in college?
Of high school,
Okay.
right before I went to college,
Right.
and she gave me this test, and she's like, "You're at a second grade level," like. And if you talk to her, she'll tell you it almost seemed impossible, right? Like, it's impossible. How do you go from that to go to college, right? And being able to perform and to finish in 4 years too, ultimately finishing in 4 years, and which we all know only like 16% of the people can accomplish that. And then going on to your master's, doing it in 2, and then finishing my doctorate in 2 years and 11 months, right, with 4 kids.
Was that all I mentioned? Oh, wait a minute. Are you kidding?
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing,
With
like,
4 kids?
so they were being born, right? When I had the first one, and so yeah, they were all coming, and yeah, I mean, you feel like, I mean, but again, when you start thinking
Yeah.
of how you're working in the fields, right? Like I remember being hopeless and looking in the sky, looking at airplanes, and I'm just like, damn, just because I'm a big brown kid and I look like an adult, you put me with adults, right? I didn't understand it, but I'm blessed, thankful that they
Well,
did that to me.
I hate to digress here, but you and your wife did this.
Yes, because now she's about to graduate with her PhD, and she's graduating in December with her PhD, and we have four boys, right?
You know, uh, well, I have to say that's you've already done quite a bit, but I'm also thinking you're just getting started.
Yes, yes. I agree. I think that there's so much work to be done in terms of the equity piece and in terms of developing young people like Ram, right? I used to be a faculty member and an advisor at the community college, and the growth that I saw just speaking the words and believing. Um, I've seen kids go to Harvard, right? I've seen people go to Ohio State, to University of Michigan, to go to MIT, and they were community college students. They should have never. But when you put people that believe in them, that's what happens, right? When you start fertilizing the soil and you plant the seed, and um, that's the beauty of it, is that you're put in this world to be a healer, right? That's my only response to that, is that we're here for a purpose.
But not everybody sees that,
Mhm.
huh?
That's true. A lot of opposition.
Well, have you found opposition from all the communities you work with? And I don't want to put in, there's opposition in your own community,
Yeah.
the Hispanic community you work with.
hmm
Indifference, I don't know how to put it,
there's always opposition. I try not to look at it by color, but by evil.
Yeah.
I try to, but I've always said that, no weapon formed against me will never prosper. Jeremiah, 54:14. And so, I truly believe that when like I always tell people I work for God, right? Like that's my main job, main source. So for me, it's feeding in the morning, waking up and communicating with him the way I do, and saying, give me my orders. And then I show up, right? I'm doing this interview. I don't know why or how we ended up here, but I'm doing it. It's for a reason. And that's how I operate. Like, yes, there's going to be opposition. There's going to be people that have told me the whole way that I couldn't do something, right? That this job right here that I have now is too big for me. But I don't listen to that. Like, God knows why he put me here. Um, and I read a lot, right? I read Napoleon, I read about um, Abraham Lincoln, the different people, and I'm always intrigued with their paths, their Gandhi, right? And I'm always fascinated with their own journeys, and so I know I have my own, and I don't lose sleep over that, over the opposition, right? Because they're always there, and yes, it's been tough. It's been really, really tough. I would be lying if I didn't tell you that I feel like I walked through hell and back. But um, at the end of the day, like I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Where
Right?
is that? What are you doing?
For me, it's being a great father, right? Like this pandemic has been such a blessing, because I'm here. I'm teaching my boys, right? Um, Professionally, I think I haven't reached my full potential, but as a parent, like this has been a blessing, right? Like but it's privilege, right? I get it. Like if if this was 20 years ago, I would be in the field, right? And my life would be probably very different. I don't know if I would have came to college, but I acknowledge that. And a good leader has to think like that, to put it into perspective, right? My kids, they've been exposed to so much. Like they train in taekwondo, right? Like they went to the YMCA. The only camps I was going to was migrant camps, right? And so I have to put it into perspective for me and for them. And yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. Um, yeah, to think about that.
Now, and what are you doing professionally right now? What's your job?
So professionally, I'm charged with advising the governor, the legislature, and the different state departments here in the state of Michigan. I I represent all the Latinos in the state of Michigan, like with COVID-19 or with the census or with the migrant stuff or small businesses. All that is in our thing. And my job is to really collaborate with, because we can't do it alone. It's collaborate with other organizations, and yeah, like I said, as an advisor, I've gone through the whole thing, right? So I'm able to speak when I'm at the table and nobody looks like me. I have the real experience of saying, you're not paying minimum wage. My brother's out there working right now. Like, you're disrespecting me, and I'm sitting here with you. But so I think that's what makes it real. When the COVID stuff, the pandemic hit, and there's no my brother, one of my brothers is here in Michigan still working, and I have a nephew. My brother doesn't read in English or speak very much English. I'm thinking, like, he's not getting the information, right? So I'm in a position, I think, that I'm able to advocate, right? And in a position to be able to speak up for those that can't. Um, and so, yeah, so that's where I'm at right now in state government.
I have to go here. Um, um, where would you say we as a people, and I don't just mean Latinos, but our human race in the U.S. is, it seems to have, and I'll credit Ramon and his generation, there was a sign that an anchor I watch a lot saw in one of the demonstrations, that it said, "You've got the wrong generation." Yeah, and that's going to stay with me to my grave. What do you think about that notion? Because the other thing, I got some questions for you. This is my knowledge. I've been to Detroit twice, and I was in and out on campaigns. I can't say I really know a lot about Michigan, but my work in the census has exposed me to Native Americans.
Mhm.
Is that a whole other culture that you are also dealing with or working with, or I don't know? Tell me.
Yeah,
And is this a different? Do you see a different time that we're turning a page historically, socially?
yeah. I mean, it's a very difficult, very, very difficult time, um, with everything going right, with what's happening with um, because of the cell phones and the videos being uploaded of what's happening to the Black community and the Latino community,
Mm-hmm.
and the years of divide and conquer, right?
Yeah.
Of our communities, like with the Middle Eastern, with the Black and Brown, and the Native American, Asian, and we've never seen the Asian community come into attack so much since the pandemic. And so it's a very interesting time. It's a time of opportunity, I think, for people like Ramon, like myself, like you, to really use all the life skills that we've had to make this world a better place. And so yeah, and in terms of the Native American community, I was just in New Mexico in January. I was in a reservation, and because I don't know if you're familiar with the Kellogg Fellowship. So
Yeah.
I'm a Kellogg Fellow, and the Kellogg has allowed me or granted me the opportunity to be amongst, um, to really um, acknowledge the land that we stand on, right? And then the community, and we don't see it in the news, but they were hit very hard, right? In New Mexico, Arizona,
Yeah.
they were wiping out full communities. And so we're often ignoring the Native community. And so, and again, this is part of this country, is that we're so focused on our people that we're just trying to hang on by the string. But you have to be very cognizant of that and collaborate with other groups to be able to beat that um, systemic racism that is part of our fabric.
You
So
you talked about your brother and minimum wage and the economics and some of the barriers you've watched and you're apparently dealing with for everybody, and in the Black community, in the Native American I mean, and I guess that's part of my question. There's so much coming together. Do you see that? How long have you been in the field you're in, and has that changed in the last 6-8 months?
So, like I said, I was in higher ed for 8 years, or probably more, because I was at Michigan State University as a grad student. And then I spent 8 years at the community college, and I have 4 years now in state government. And I came in at the end tail of President Obama's presidency, and so I've been, and then President Trump came in, and then we had a Republican governor. Now we have a Democrat governor. So in the 4 years, I've seen a ton. Right? I've seen different administrations. I've seen, yeah. I mean, we've seen the first African American lieutenant governor, right? That did some work with the farm workers and over in DC. And so it is very interesting. It's a very interesting time. And so change, it feels like it's constant. It's constantly changing. Like I said, I see it as a good opportunity. Um, there's challenges, right? There's challenges with our students that are graduating, college graduates, like not knowing where they're going to apply or have a job, or the pandemic has really brought in a lot of uncertainty. And so those are the challenges, but I think I'm very optimistic that things are going to work out, that things are going to get, better. And um, there's going to be a lot of positions open for Latinos to get in there. Um, so yeah, I mean, politically, I think that we just need to do a better job of helping Latinos run. Right, we're in districts where we should easily win, and yet the division and conquering, we lose. Right, we cross each other off and let somebody else win. And I look at South Texas, for example. It's predominantly Latino, yet the power is still with Anglo. Right, like you go to the community college, you go through businesses, like it's crazy to me how and Gandhi talked about this a lot, how a few English people rule the whole country of India. Like it's incredible how that mentality in 2020 can still resonate.
I don't want to get too far off of where we're supposed to be headed, but I do have to ask you about your boss, this governor. How would you describe her in your context?
Yeah, I mean, she's tough. I mean, you can never be trained for anything like this, right? To shut the entire state. Um, and the blowback that she got, I mean, she's in the House. It's controlled by the Republican. The Senate's uh, by the Republicans. She's a Democrat, and she still went against the grain, right? She still put the executive order to keep people safe, and so I honestly commend her for the courage. I'm sure uh, it wasn't easy to do that, but she did it, and is still continuing to fight those battles. Um, and for her to put up an executive order to protect migrant workers, right? I think it's good. Is there more work? Obviously, we're never satisfied. I think we always do more, right? But I commend her for the work and courage of stepping up to the plate when sometimes you're not trained to deal with a pandemic, right? And so
I don't know. Is anybody trained to deal with a pandemic?
yeah, I mean, some people are, some people aren't, right? We see it in the news. Uh, some people kept, she kept executive order going of the. That's why our numbers are so low and have been low compared to other states, right? When you're seeing a skyrocket in places like Texas or Florida or California, right? They lifted the restrictions too early, and um, I mean, you can't prevent the COVID from spreading, but you can contain it. You can, Europe showed us that they were able to minimize. Um, we haven't been able to, right? Brazil exploded.
Oh yeah.
Um, Part of it is it could be the education piece of it, and the other one is just the leadership, right? I mean, it's tough. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely tough. It's exposed our inequalities of more black and brown people dying, right? Because of whatever, unable to get resources to put a mask or get a mask or, yeah.
And you boil it down to when you say black and brown people dying, and you bring it back to such simple masks, getting more masks, using them. I mean, uh, what have you seen in the community in that regard, in terms of, I hate to put it this way, but battling, trying to handle the pandemic? What have you seen in Lansing and Michigan?
It's very hard. I only go out for essentials, right? I go to the Mexican store and I see people not wearing one. Some do, some don't. I struggle with my own mother. She's 80 years old and she's down in Texas, and I keep telling her, and I struggle because they don't get it, right? Like, and um, yeah, I mean, just telling her when my sisters come over to visit her to like put it on for protection on both sides. But even here, I mean, you see it. You see some of our community, our black and brown community, not wearing masks, gathering 15, 20 people, right? I mean, really asking for it, and it's tough. It's sad to see, because the thing is that yes, maybe we could survive it if you're younger and healthy, but what about your grandparents? What about your parents, right? If you transmit that to them, they might not make it. And so I think that's um, the piece where I struggle with seeing people not wearing masks and washing their hands or hand sanitizer, all this stuff, right? So
Have you seen? It's sounds like you've seen. What have you seen out there? Changes or not?
um I mean, there is like I said, we were able to curve it down, I would like to to say that because of our leadership in government, there was changes. There weren't a lot of people out. But again, our community, a lot of that times are essential workers. They work in the stores, they work in the meat companies, they work in the dairy farms. You can't stay home, right? And um, so yeah, I mean, it's hard. Like I said, I'm at home. I'm working from home, so I don't go out unless I have to. I'm grocery shopping or I have to do something, right? Um, so like I said, all I see is people, and some people aren't wearing masks, but that's across the board. You know, white, black, brown, Asian.
So we know terms that we've never heard before. Social distance. Um,
Yes.
um, the notion of the need and use of a mask. Uh, how do you, especially in your position, how do you deal with having to learn these things and trying to, I mean, especially in what I'll call our community, but in the minority communities, they're having to learn different things
Yes.
and you're helping.
Yes. Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, um, it is. I mean, it's something that as Latinos, right? Like we hug. I mean, it's all about touching, right? Like you're being with family, and at what price, right? Are you willing to not follow that? I think it's been tough for our community to abide to that, you know, to those things. In Michigan, we don't have such a large elder community. It's a lot of younger. When you look at the data, there's very few elders here in Michigan. So um, so that could be a reason that, and don't get me wrong, there's Latinos that have passed away. We've had about 6,000 that have passed since the pandemic started. The problem is that they haven't kept good records here in Michigan by race, and so that's been a problem. Um, but yeah, no, it's been tough, and like I said, for us, it's getting materials translated and disseminated through our trusted leaders and communities. So, you know, we have an indigenous community here in Grand Rapids. They speak Mam out of Central America, and so one of our commissioners been fighting hard to make sure that we get materials, and so we finally did. Right, it's late in the game, but we know it's coming back. Right, we know that the COVID-19 is not going anywhere. So we've been able to get some translations in Man for social distancing, but I worry that how many people are we leaving behind, right? That are still operating because they don't know, they don't speak Spanish, they don't speak English, and so yeah, for us, it's doing our homework and paying attention to that stuff because all lives matter, right? Like in terms of we need to take care of each other, humanity.
But that's yet another hurdle, right? I mean, we're talking about Central America to Michigan. That's a long distance.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
just mileage, the miles, the distance, in many ways, cultures, you know, the language. Um, so, how did that happen? Where did those people come from? I hate to put it that way, but how did they get to Lansing?
yeah. There's you know, here in Lansing, we have a large Cuban community, a refugee. This was one of the settlement cities out of like 4 or 5. Lansing was one of them. That's a Cuban community. So we have a large Cuban, but the Central Americans, um, they've been here a lot of times migrating from Florida. They come, you know, they worked in the fields, but there's a lot of resettlement too with refugee or not refugee, like children that come that are abandoned. A lot of the times they're put in Grand Rapids and like Bethany. Uh, so they're brought here, right? When they're separated or when there was in the border there was a lot of unaccompanied children. They ended up here, established here.
Really?
Um, yeah, here in Grand Rapids. That's why I say we have such a young community here of young people, and then I think people, that's how migration starts. Like maybe you get a family member and then they end up coming over here, right? And settling from
Oh yeah.
Honduras, from Guatemala, El Salvador. Um, and the other thing too that I want to acknowledge and lift is with the George Floyd situation. Like um, I brought this up to the governor's policy team, is that when we're looking at policing and policing, to not forget about Latinos, right? We also have Afro Latinos, right? The Afro Latino that doesn't speak English and gets pulled over, and they're at risk of getting killed and stuff for not being able to comply. So to keep all that into perspective, and then our own experiences, and not to belittle um, their experiences, but I've had, in my head, because been pulled over and with my children. So we just want to make sure that we don't leave us out, that this is not a black and brown, black and white, but also brown issue.
You've touched on something I wanted to ask you about, and now you open that door. The notion, as tragic as it was, of what George Floyd went through, not exactly, but I've seen a lot of that attitude in our community, in all Southern California,
Yes.
I'm sure in Texas. Is that a hard point to get across? It matters, huh?
Mm-hmm.
You alluded to your experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to divert too much, but when I think about you in the fields,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to. I was exposed to it. My family did it, and I have a lot of friends that were out working the fields, and I followed Caesar pretty closely when I was in journalism. Did you ever get sprayed while they were, trying to control pests in the field when you're working? I mean, what kinds of things did you go through that you can identify with as we go through this?
Yeah, I mean, I was, I don't know if they were doing it on purpose, but I've been sprayed by the planes, right, and pesticides, and so I think that's part of the reason. I think my father, he passed at 62. He had a lot of health complications. My brother passed at 43. I'm very young, from all these health. I have two brothers that have all kinds of health issues. They work, right? I mean, I stopped um, the hardcore labor at like 16. If I would have continued, I don't know. I mean, my body feels older. But I'll tell you one experience that really fueled me. And to this day, I think has changed the way that I live and approach life. I was working, um, I was hoeing in Coloma, Michigan. I was young. I was probably like 7. I was with my dad, and my sisters were there. My sisters,
7?
and we were hoeing with a small, on the floor. You're on the floor,
Short hose, yeah.
um, and it's backbreaking, and it's 100 degrees. My father was already diabetic, and he was throwing up, and he was just throwing up, and the farmer came and was so rude. As a little boy, that was very traumatic, right? It was very traumatic. It was hurtful. I still, to this day, sometimes cry, um, thinking that I could not do anything for him. Um, and that my dad was bigger than life, right? When he was home, he was big, right? Like listening to music, he was a boss. But when you walk out of the doors, you shrink a little bit. And I didn't understand that. And um, that has had a lasting, I think, you know, when I need to get into a fight, like I think of that and I'm just like, if somebody's being mistreated, you better watch out because I'm coming, right? And I'm nice, but I can be tough too. And those experiences, I mean, watching my father get yelled at or mistreated, has had lasting effects. And um, yeah, I mean, and I talked to my sisters about it, and it wasn't until this year that I asked them. I said, "Were you guys there?" And they were like, "Yeah." And they still cry about it because we couldn't do anything. We were kids.
Well, you saw,
Hmm.
they saw, you saw, they saw.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, was I, you know, am I making this up? Like, they're like, nah. It traumatized. Had a lasting effect, right? And it still does to this day. So when I'm about to get into a fight, um, or that I have to advocate, I think about that. I think of my father being helpless, um, and that I have an obligation, right? I was put on this earth to defend and to do what I can, right? So that that does not happen.
Um, what you've been through, everything you've seen, and I keep thinking about you as a child in the fields in Texas, and then everywhere else.
Hmm.
That's with you at the table at a meeting
Yes,
tomorrow.
and the people too, right? The people.
Those images remain with you and
Hmm.
help move you.
Hmm. They were in Harvard. They're in the Kellogg. When I'm sitting with senators or if I'm with the governor, like they're there, right? They're not physically there, but they're there with me. It's a community. Um, yeah, it's my community. Um, it's the people that have been physically, mentally. It's my ancestors, right? I think of my ancestors. Um, yeah, like this phrase that I learned in Tuscaloosa in Mississippi. I was in Mississippi and I was at the college. I can't remember the name of the college, but they have this phrase, "I am my ancestors' wildest dreams." That's what I think of when they were being raped and beat and they try to take us down and keep us down. I'm sure they were thinking of me, um, having that image of me, right? Like, um, and so I carry that with me as well, because again, it's my ancestors that survived um, everything, the colonization, uh, and then we forwarded to 2020. And yes, when I'm at the table or when I'm competing, like, or when I'm writing the dissertation, right, and they're giving me hell, pinning me against a corner, accusing me of plagiarism. I bring all that with me, right? Just because I'm English as a second language, don't think I could write, I can, whatever. That's why I mean opposition's always here. But my faith and my, yeah, those experiences, like you said, I bring them, right? They carry me, they lift me in times of when it's dark.
I'd like to try and get a little more specific to the virus and the pandemic.
Yes.
How have you seen it? How, if I asked you, how has it impacted you? How have you seen it?
Hmm.
What would your response or responses be?
Yeah, for me personally and my family, I've been very privileged, right? I, like I said, I'm sheltered. I can work from home. Not everybody has that luxury. So I've seen it from that point of view that, like I said, my brother's out there, he's working. my nephew's out there working. My sisters are working, right? I have a sister that's in the border patrol, and
Oh, wow.
it's it's a different paths, um, but she's out there working, right? I am very fortunate that I'm able to work from home, so I've seen it from that point of view. I feel like I'm going to war. When you go out and you don't know if you're going to bring it back. So mentally, it's yeah, it's been crazy. But I take all the precautions. I am able to afford the mask, the sanitizer. So I look at that, and I look at my privilege, right? That others don't. So I've donated, right? Personally, that's what I've been able to do is donate and give, and take things, right, where community needs. And I don't never do it with my name out there or anything. A lot of the times it's nobody knows, right? It's just you're donating, giving. But we never do it for fame or for recognition. So you'll never hear, oh, this, that. No. We do it out of our heart, and nobody needs to know.
In that realm, in that respect, the pandemic, the virus, where are we headed? Where do you think we're headed? Where are you headed?
Yeah, I mean, it's coming, right? It's coming again. We just saw the numbers yesterday here in Michigan. 4th of July, people were out there not wearing masks, partying. We saw the number jump to almost 500 again. Those 500 are going to go to their homes, and they're going to infect more people, whether we want it or not. There's no quarantining for 14 days if you went out. They're going to go to their jobs. People are going to get infected. So it's here. It's coming. Um, it's a very troubling and scary time. Here in Michigan, we're going to start next month. We're going to start seeing the fevers, the coughs, the flus, and we're not going to know if it's COVID or something else, because a cold is coming, right? And so there's a lot of fear. I fear for my community. This is something that I've been advocating. Migrants are coming from Florida, from Texas, to come work in the fields, and they're coming from hotspots, right? They might already bring it with them and could be infecting people. And so I'm trying to advocate that we as a state, we go to the farms and test farm workers, that we're aggressive, that we're aggressive, and that we do whatever we can to do, because it affects not, it's the humans. That's what I'm focused on. It also affects the food for everybody, right? Like it really does. I mean, it has an impact on the meat shortage, on the fruit, vegetable. Like it could be a catastrophe, right, all around, if we don't take care of the people that are taking care of us, and that are very vulnerable. So I don't know exactly where we're heading, but it's not done, right? We're nowhere near the end of this pandemic. And so yeah, I worry that the flu season's coming.
One of the things that I go through that I learned a long time ago is this notion of when we have two languages to start with, you learn that, well, there's a way to say things in Spanish that you just can't translate, and vice versa. Do you see those kind of multilingual, multicultural barriers, issues as we go forward, trying to get the attention of the communities you serve?
Yes, I think yeah, I mean, it's very difficult when you have an array of Latinos, right?
An array is a good word.
Yeah, because you have Latinos that are here on yeah, I mean, you have Latinos that are Republican, Democrat. I mean, that they are Catholic, Christian. There's so many things, right? There's indigenous, Afro Latinos, first generation with the fourth generation, and the clash, um, and the messaging, right? Of who's saying it. Are they trusted messengers? Is there beef, right, between um, people? Like all those are realities that the pandemic um, has helped in some ways unite, but still there's that division, right? And so, um, yeah, I mean, and so many differences that I've seen in different areas when you have a recent immigrant and you have like a fifth generation, fourth generation, or you have somebody with no education, can read or write, um, to somebody with a PhD and everything in between. Um, you have Flint, Michigan, that's struggling with the
Oh,
water
yeah.
stuff. So you add this to the mix of a pandemic, then um, yeah, yeah, it's heavy. I mean, yeah, yeah, it's just stressful, and I don't think anybody is, yeah, ever prepared for this.
You and your family are safe? I mean, you know what I mean. Healthy.
Yes, healthy. We
What
again,
ages are your boys?
so I have a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old.
You have a lot of energy just to keep up with it.
Yeah, they're good. They're good boys. Yeah, no, they're good boys, and so it makes it easier. I take them. I took them strawberry picking the other day. So, because again, you wanna, they're not gonna have your same
Oh
experiences,
my God. Yeah.
but I take them out there, right, to go pick when we can, before the pandemic, volunteer. Um, Take them with the college students, just the exposure, right? They all do taekwondo, so we compete in Colorado at the U.S. Taekwondo Open in Indiana. So they travel, right? They have all these experience, and they still continue to do taekwondo on Zoom. Um, like I said, it's a lot of privilege, and again, you see the disparities of some people that barely making it, right? And
What,
so,
what, where were you? Do you remember your childhood? Where you were when you were born? I mean, and I don't, you know what I mean. What's this memory you have?
yeah, all my memories are in the field. I grew up, there was no childcare. um, I grew up literally with in the field, right, gateando in the field. Like, I was born in Mexico, in San Luis Potosí, and young. But all I remember is the fields. I mean, no toys, no nothing, right? I'm actually writing um, a memoir book because I never think, or the reason they're so fresh, my what I'm telling you, is because I've been writing. Um,
And I
but
get to the question I have is: do you ever think about the distance from those fields to where you've been to where you are now? I mean, how old are you?
30, 36,
You've
36.
covered a lot of ground,
Mm-hmm,
literally and figuratively.
mm-hmm.
Does that come to mind at meetings and some of the stuff you go through, deal with?
I have not, I have not, because you're always going, right.
You don't have.
The
Yeah.
pandemic has allowed me to slow down and think, and as I'm writing, um, I'm really digging into some of the, and healing, right, because it's part of it is healing. When I think of my father, and when I think of experiences of discrimination, or um, is trauma, right, that we hide, and then we just move on and kind of learn. So, but now I've been thinking more about it, and how how incredible it is to be where I'm at when I didn't see a path, right? When you're working the 18-hour shifts, I didn't see a path. I didn't see a path. I was already socialized to think that the farmers' kids were gonna be my bosses. And that was my reality. I mean, I was like, oh, that's gonna be my boss, right? That's how, as kid, um, every farmer that I went to, oh, they're gonna be my boss, right? And to break from that, it's pretty incredible.
But I can't let this pass. Had to be. Was there a moment when you wait? I mean, I've had a lot of moments in different ways, but not like yours. Was there a moment when you said, no, 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 I can do something else?
The moment was when my dad passed away when I was a sophomore. I was getting ready to quit because my sister was graduating
In
in
high
May.
school?
College.
College? Oh, my.
I was a sophomore, so I had already fulfilled what I had promised my dad to do to take care of my sister. I had made it to the 2.0s and the struggles, and Myra was graduating. My dad passed in March, and she was graduating in May. Actually, did quit. I went to Mexico. I spent like 13 days there, and then Myra flew back by herself. And I told her, I said, I'm done. But what happened was that when we buried my dad, I promised him that I would get the highest education. I think that was the turning point. I made a promise. I made a promise that I didn't know I could keep, right? I didn't know what it was like or what, I didn't know anybody that had a doctorate degree. And I made that promise, and then I didn't go with Myra. I was like, nah, I can't, I'm done. After making the promise, I couldn't leave. And the Michigan State was calling me. They said, we have all your stuff. You need to move it if you're not coming back. And something, whatever it was, I went back and never looked back, right? I showed up at Michigan State and graduated, like I said, went to grad school, and it was that promise, I think, that kept me going, that promise to him. But that's really when everything changed. I mean, I was laser focused.
And you were in Mexico at that moment.
I was in Mexico. We had to go bury my dad.
Yeah.
I stayed, and you know the part that was because I was very antisocial. Didn't have any friends first like 2 years, and I had a lot of anger. And so when I went and I saw my father, there was like a ton of people in the village, right? There was people from all over the ranchos to pay their respects, and I think that really that triggered something, right? Like I wanted to be like my dad. I wanted to, and hearing the stories that he would send money and help all these people. That was very. I didn't know that about my father, right? Like you know your dad, but I didn't know everything he did for his community, and I think that was, I mean, definitely was life changing.
Interesting, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Where's Ramon? Is Ramon still with us?
Hey, yeah, I'm still here. I don't know what happened, but my video kind of cut out for a second, but I'm still here. I'm still listening and stuff.
It's Maggie. It's her face kept appearing.
Yeah. I don't know what's up with that, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions? Anything you want to touch on? I'm wrapped up, I think.
No, this was great. You're a really fascinating man, Felipe.
Fascinating, yeah. Another fascinating person that Maggie has found us, like Andres. My God.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure for me, you know.
Me too.
You know, obviously there's a reason why our paths are crossing. And so I don't believe in accidents, right? I did tell you that I don't even know how I ended up here, but I don't believe in accidents.
No, I agree. I completely agree. I understand what you're saying. I need to get back with you and we'll do it at our own to fill out the forms I should have done.
Yeah.
But when you said you had this morning open, I didn't want to pass it up. And Ramon's good enough to put it together for us. So
Mhm.
Algo más?
No,
From your
that's it.
perspective, Felipe?
Thank
You
you.
know, God knows, just so you know, I've known Maggie a long time. And
Mhm.
she put together a project more than 20 years ago because because of her family, was concerned that Latinos in World War II were forgotten. My father happened to be in World War II, and coincidental, but so before I knew it, I was editing and working with her on the Voces original project. And she said, "Well, let's add Vietnam." And then, "Well, let's add Korea." Oh my God, she's got more than 1,500 interviews in the can. And then she comes up with this idea. I said, "Are you crazy?" But she's never afraid to. And I think that this is valuable stuff.
Mhm.
If nothing, to identify people like you and Andres and Ramon's, I know, soaking it in. So if Ramon has anything, go ahead. Otherwise, well, thank you, and you and I will be in touch.
No, that's
Absolutely.
about it.
Take care of those boys
Yeah, thank you.
and your
Thank you.
wife. My God, what a!
Yeah.
If you come to LA, I'm right by the airport, so we're in Marina Del Rey.
Oh, you're down in California?
Yeah, yeah.
I was I flew into LAX. I
Yeah,
went
I'm about
to
5 minutes away.
oh yeah, I was in Riverside, California to speak. I went to go speak with my friend and my friend Rick Thomas to
Oh,
the
the one you were
Chavalas.
just referring to.
Yeah.
I was public information officer there for 5 years. I went to
Oh,
school there. Oh yeah,
in
worked at
Riverside?
Riverside. I worked at the
Yeah.
Riverside paper, but I
Wow.
went to UC Riverside and had a dismal educational career until I figured out, well, that's not where I'm headed. And then I wound up getting my degree in journalism and doing okay. So, but Riverside's an interesting town, and it's going through a lot right now for some reason.
Yeah.
It's a particular hotspot. Gracias.
Well, thank you both, Ram, Henry. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your time and efforts.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely. You guys have a wonderful day. And if you need anything, I'm at your service.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.